Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here. Game 5 of the 2026 NBA Finals and the 2026 NBA Finals in general are in the books. The New York Knicks, for the first time in 53 years, are NBA champions. Again, for the first time in 53 years, the New York Knicks are NBA champions, defeating the Spurs 94-90 in Game 5. A 2-0 lead became a 2-1 lead, which looked like it was going to be a 2-2 series. And then a historical comeback and a calm before the storm delivered one of the most famous New York sports championships in history, with a closeout performance that will live throughout the annals not only of New York sports but of NBA history, for a team that is simply that, a team, with the heart and determination of a lion in its leader and a bunch of men that would storm the beach on Normandy if he led them. The New York Knicks are your 2026 NBA champions, and this is my Game 5 review for the 2026 NBA Finals. Of course, as I mentioned, the Knicks winning 94-90 and capturing their first NBA championship since 1973. I think Kenny Smith pointed out if they had not won the title, or they win it and they go on a 53-year drought, their next title is scheduled to be in 2079. Just for some context on that one there. Of course, Jalen Brunson, an all-time closeout game. 45 points. 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals and 3 turnovers, 51.9% from the field, 57.1% from deep, 86.7% from the free throw line. It is the most points scored in a finals game by a New York Knicks player ever, and it is tied with Michael Jordan for the most points scored in a championship closeout game on the road. From a percentage standpoint, in closeout games, it's the second most points scored as far as team percentage in an NBA Finals series closeout game, behind Jordan's 45 of 87 in 98. It is a remarkable effort from Jalen Brunson to do that. Now, again, you would have to suggest the Spurs were mentally defeated after that game. And again, they took a really nice lead. They controlled the pace early. They weren't able to compose themselves down the stretch. That's a learning curve that they have to suffer. But at the end of the day, the opposition still has to come over the top and get the job done. And that's exactly what Jalen Brunson did in a very, very big way. Just an all-time closeout game, as I mentioned there, one of the more historical performances to close out a series in NBA Finals history, and it will certainly go down in the annals of New York Knicks history as far as closing out a series, because you are going to have the next generation now talk about the Jalen Brunson game, much like generations prior spoke about the Clyde Frazier game. That's where it is going to be sitting. Just an unbelievable effort there by Brunson. Of course, capping it all off, the Knicks become the 8th different champion in 8 seasons in the NBA, the longest run of parity the league has seen, stemming back to the 2019 Raptors, through to the 2020 Lakers, the 21 Milwaukee Bucks, the 22 Warriors, the 23 Nuggets, the 2024 Boston Celtics, and of course, Oklahoma City last year. And with the parity in the league right now, it's very, very tough to see exactly where we're going to see a repeat champion. Keeping in mind the Knicks did only win 53 regular season games, and following their NBA Cup battle with the Spurs went on and played at a 63 win pace to win 62 games. The Knicks themselves only played at a 50 win pace. It was a meeting of probably the best team in the league following the NBA Cup, taking on the best team in the playoffs, and with a 15-1 run after their 2-1 deficit to the Hawks, you know, the Knicks put together one of the great all-time playoff runs. Yeah, okay, you can argue they didn't necessarily play some of the best competition, but you have to look at the start of the season. Myself and most people said the Knicks would win the East, and that a pass mark would be the NBA Finals. That's what they did, and they won a title. To dismiss that after the standard was set would be idiotic. They then took down the team in the conference finals that everyone thought they would play in the conference finals at the start of the season in the Cleveland Cavaliers. What else were they meant to do? Boston themselves couldn't get over the hump. Detroit couldn't get over the hump. That is actually not New York's fault. They didn't play them. One of the great runs for a title here for the New York Knicks. As I mentioned there with Brunson, 45 points. We'll go on to the rest of the team there as well. Big contributions there. Josh Hart, 13 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists on the night. You had 14 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists from Mikal Bridges. OG Anunoby, after his big game, still came up with some nice defensive plays. 11 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals and a block. Karl Anthony Towns fouled out of the game. 2 points, 10 rebounds, 1 assist, 3 steals and a block. That was the starting 5 contributions. You had Landry Shamet with 5 points. You then had 2 points, 10 rebounds from Mitchell Robinson, who was underrated in that game. And Ariel Huckaporty with a massive block. Only played 2 minutes, but had one of the biggest defining blocks of the New York Knicks game to really start swinging things there to get back on terms. On the other side of things, for the San Antonio Spurs, Dylan Harper led the way. 25 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and a block. 52.6 from the field, 50% from deep. This kid really announced himself as the future two-way leader of guards in this league. Wemby had a really nice opening few minutes, but really struggled outside of the halfway point of the second term. 19 points, 14 rebounds, 2 assists, and 5 block shots. 36.8 from the field. He will have some learning curve, there's no doubt about that. He is a future all-time great. There are a lot of things that are still on the table for Victor Wembanyama. He is only 3 seasons in, but it would be fair to say that the numbers do lie, and he very much had an underwhelming NBA Finals by the standard he was setting. 14 points, 7 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal to Julian Champagnie. Devin Vassell, 12 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals and a block. You then move on to Stephon Castle, who only had 6 points on 1 of 10 shooting. You then had 7 points on 3 of 15 shooting from De'Aaron Fox. And I know De'Aaron Fox is wearing a lot of the cause and blame in this one, but you do have to understand that, for some of these Spurs starters, if they just contribute their very little bit they need to do, you are potentially sitting here talking about a San Antonio Spurs title. From a statistical standpoint, the Knicks delivered the first, the third, and the 5th largest comeback in NBA Finals history, all in this series. Again, the largest comeback, the 3rd largest comeback, and the 5th largest comeback in NBA Finals history happened in this series for the Knicks. Adding to the point, the Spurs led for 72% of game time in this series. Now, again, we can go back to records and we can go back to the level of inexperience. But that is a team that by comparison wasn't able to close it out versus a team that did, that knew what to do to get the job done. And again, I'll put my hand up. I thought the Spurs would win this series in 6. Realistically, both sides could have swept. The Spurs could be sitting here a 5-game NBA champion. But, as they say, if your grandmother had wheels, she'd be a bike. And that's not the case. Massive, massive game there for the Knicks. If you want to look on an overall standpoint as well, they won the board battle by 1. They turned the ball over 2 less times. So they get 1 extra possession, and they get 2 extra bonus ones from the Spurs for a game that's 4 points. Now, you can look at shooting splits. Both teams shot under 40%. They both shot the same amount of threes made and taken from deep. Yes, there were more free throws for the Knicks, but they were the more aggressive team. There's not much more to put in there. Foul count is the exact same. Defensive numbers pretty much mirror one another. Turnovers pretty much mirror one another. But you want to put it down to little things. There were 3 extra possessions in New York's favour. They win by 4 points. Massive, massive effort overall. If you go back and look at the first quarter, it was the same story that it has been for every single game. The Spurs jump out early, they get a lead. It was low scoring, but they jump out, they get a lead, and they set the tone. They led by as much as 10, and that's exactly what the margin was at quarter time. More points in the paint, 12-0. More second chance points, 6-0. And again, a 23-13 lead. Dylan Harper setting the tone, 7 points in that first term. 6 from Victor Wembanyama, 5 coming from Julian Champagnie on the other side of things. The only scorers were Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby, carrying on from their fourth quarter efforts. 8 points in that first term from Jalen Brunson. 3 of 6 shooting, played all 12 minutes, was setting the tone early. From a shooting standpoint, though, the Knicks under 20% from the field. They were really struggling as far as that was concerned. They'd turned the ball over more. They weren't getting as many rebounds. Again, factoring in points in the paint. And the Spurs really set the tone early. 3 big block shots as well. Wemby setting it on a huge defensive effort there. Second quarter, things started to swing, and that's exactly what usually happens in these games. The Knicks cutting the lead down to 5, led the quarter 24-19, and at halftime it was 42-37 in favour of the Spurs. It was the lowest halftime aggregate score since the 2010 NBA Finals between the Lakers and the Celtics. And as Mike Breen said, the NBA landscape has changed significantly since that point. When you look at things from the Knicks, another 8 points from Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges with 8 points, Josh Hart with 6 points. They were the true leaders there. Karl Anthony Towns, 2 points in that quarter. Wemby with another 2 blocks, only the 3 points on 1 of 6 shooting for him. High scorers Dylan Harper, 4 points on 1 of 3 shooting. Devin Vassell, 4 points on 2 of 3 shooting. And it was a flip of the script there. The Spurs shooting 26.1% compared to 40.9% for the Knicks, who were able to get back into that rebound battle there. They managed to dish out a couple more assists. They were also able to limit their turnovers by comparison. They balanced up the points in the paint for a 6-6 split. They balanced up the second chance points for a 3-3 split. Keeping in mind, though, the Spurs led by 16 at one point in this quarter. The margin essentially was cut down to 5 at the half. Then the third quarter happened, and things started to get interesting. The Knicks were able to, put some points on the board. They were able to keep it tight, only a 2-point contest. But again, the Spurs got out to as much as a 15-point lead here in this third term. Dylan Harper, 10 points. Big production off the bench from him. 7 from Victor Wembanyama, 6 from Julian Champagnie. There was a lot going on there. Spurs shooting 55% from the field, 40% from deep, leading the rebound count. Turnovers were up, but nonetheless were gaining that possession. Big battle in the third term as far as points in the paint. Both sides splitting 12 apiece. The Knicks getting more second chance points. You can just see that urgency coming into the game. Again, we're talking about a lead of as much as 15 for San Antonio at home, but they weren't able to capitalise. They were only leading by 7 by the third period. For the other side of things, though, for the Knicks, Jalen Brunson, 14 big third quarter points to really keep his team in it. You would have to suggest they did have a massive run to win back some favour and certainly win back some momentum in the third term of Game 4. If Brunson doesn't have that many points, I think it becomes a different ball game. It does certainly look more like it's going to be a 3-2 split heading into Game 6. But Brunson putting him on his back, getting the job done. And again, there was some real conversation, not only from myself, but certainly from other people that I've spoken to as Knicks fans, and certainly some of the discourse that you see pop up through media channels and social media, that there was a case for OG Anunoby to be really up there as the finals MVP. He was having the most efficient 20-point series in finals history up until the start of Game 5. Was really proving to be a contributor on both sides of the ball, and his efficiency factor was really coming into play. But he did not have the same game in this in Game 5. It's just that simple. Again, Brunson at that point played 12 quarters, 12 minutes in the third term. He had 8:35 in the second quarter, and we know he played every minute of the first. Really big contributions from him down the stretch. And coming into the last quarter, well, it was an absolute riot from the San Antonio, from a Knicks standpoint. 11 of 16 from the free throw line, 8 of 17 from the field, 29 points to come away with the victory. 5 more rebounds there by the Knicks as well. They were controlling the defensive glass. They were putting pressure on the Spurs. Again, Spurs went 7 of 22. They went 31.8 from the field, and they only made 2 out of 6 free throws. So you want to talk about the difference in free throws? That's well and true. But the Knicks had more points in the paint. The Knicks had more rebounds. They're scoring more efficiently, and they have the finals MVP on their side. Jalen Brunson, 15 fourth quarter points. He finished with 45 for the game. No other player scored more than 5 points in that quarter. Landry Shamet with the 5. On the other side of things, no player scored more than 5 points for the Spurs. Devin Vassell with 5 points, 2 of 3 shooting. Wemby, 3 from 1 of 5 shooting. Harper, 4, 2 of 6 shooting. Again, they went 7 of 22 from the field. They led by as much as 10. They lost the game by 4. And that is what summarises the New York Knicks. Second half by them, 57-48. Just completely outplaying the Spurs from that standpoint. Shot better from the free throw line, 16-21. I know they had more attempts, but in that second half, the Spurs went 6 of 13 from the line. 6 of 13 from the line. Gave up 4 more rebounds. Turned the ball over 2 more times. You know, extra possessions, not converting when you've got the basketball will kill you in a close game against an experienced team. And that's exactly what the Knicks were able to do. They were able to harness that. They were able to control it. And that is the reason they are your NBA champs. There is not much more that I can say or add to that. That is just the dominance that they had on this game. And overall, when it mattered, on this series. And that's how they wrapped it up with a 4-1 win. The New York Knicks are your 2026 NBA champions, the first time in 53 years. Finals MVP, well, it ended up being arbitrary after that massive closeout game. One of the great championship ceiling games of all time. Jalen Brunson, massive series for him. 32.6 points, 4.2 rebounds, 4.6 assists, 2 steals, 3.8 turnovers a game. Shot 42.1 from the field, 38.9 from deep, 86% from the free throw line. Other key contributors, OG Anunoby, 21.2 points, 4.8 rebounds, an assist, 1.4 steals, and 1.4 blocks on 0.6 turnovers. He shot 52.5 from the field, 50% from deep, 86.7 from the free throw line. Karl Anthony Towns, 13 points, 10.6 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.4 steals, and a block. Had some crucial defensive moments against Victor Wembanyama. Was pretty much a non-factor outside of Game 2 from an offensive standpoint, and particularly a no-show over Games 4 and 5 with foul trouble, but still putting up those numbers there. 49% from the field, 33.3 from deep, 100% from the free throw line, and it was Mikal Bridges rounding out the double-digit scorers. 10.4 points, 3.6 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 0.6 steals, 0.4 blocks on 0.6 turnovers. Shot 46.5 from the field, 42.1 from deep, and 66.7 from the free throw line. Again, your finals MVP, Jalen Brunson. On the other side of things for the Spurs, they had 6 double-digit scorers. That's just some idea of how well they played. You had 2 of them under 40%. You had 4 of them under 50%. Only 1 player shooting over 50%. That was Devin Vassell, 53.7% for his 12.8 points a game. For Wemby, in his NBA Finals debut, 26 points, 11.2 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 1 steal on 3.6 blocks, 42.3% from the field, 27.3% from deep, and 78.6% from the free throw line. Again, below the lofty standards that he did set for himself. And while some of the defensive play and defensive numbers do stand up, he wasn't able to, deliver when it mattered. And that's where some of those false numbers and that false number narrative is going to come into play, because at the end of the day, you do have to be able to deliver when it matters the most, and that's exactly what the Spurs weren't able to do. Again, Harper, 18 points a game, Castle, 14.6 points a game, De'Aaron Fox, 12.8 points a game, keeping in mind that both Castle and Fox shooting under 40%, Fox under 35%, which is just crazy work when you want to factor that in. Both players, you can argue, had just as poor a series, and 11 points per game on 40.9% there from Julian Champagny. But that's why New York won the series. They delivered when it mattered the most. They closed out the series. They had the finals MVP. And again, the heart of a lion for a leader, leading them onto the beach at Normandy. Pretty simple stuff. But that is the summary, ladies and gentlemen. That is the end of the NBA season. Again, for the first time in 53 years, the New York Knicks are your NBA champions. If they don't win another one for 53 years, it'll be 2079. And with my lifestyle, I'm not going to be here to report on it. I can assure you of that. Massive game for the Knicks. Massive series for the Knicks. Again, I don't think I've ever seen a series with a 4-1 result where you could have made a legitimate case that the other team could have won and the same criticism still would have been held of the defeated team. It's one of the more remarkable finals series, certainly in my lifetime. And I've seen every finals game that I can possibly get my hands on film, since at least 1979. It's one of the more remarkable series I've ever seen. Almost 50 years of finals basketball encapsulated in all of that. And it's hard to get your hands on a lot of that footage, and it's hard to get full games without having to clip it and piece it together. But it's one of the more remarkable series. For a 4-1 series, it's strange how different it was. But in a way, it was a very good different. The Spurs, they'll be back. They've got a young core. They've got an extreme generational talent with them. They've got a bunch of guys that clearly can play. But what they need to do now is they need to go and stand under some very bright lights and turn the temperature up in the room. And they need to be getting comfortable with that. When the temperature rises and the lights get a bit brighter, that's when you have to step up. And that's exactly what New York were able to do. And that's why New York are your 2026 NBA champions. Anyway, guys, that's been me. Thank you for tuning in throughout the season. I'll be looking to get some other videos out over the off-season, hoping to finally get my greatest players of all time list updated. It has been 4 years since I was able to get a decent publication on that. 80 years of the league. Might expand it out to 80 players. We'll see how we go. But plenty for me to cover during the off-season. Of course, you can head over to my highlights channel, JB's Highlights and Mixtapes. I will have the Jalen Brunson Finals MVP mixtape out in a couple of weeks. That'll be 26 June for Australia. Pretty sure it's 26 June. Works out to be about the same. For that one there, currently got a Halliburton mix up, and of course we'll eventually get out the MVP clips, the Defensive Player of the Year clips, all that sort of stuff. That'll be coming out. Head over there if you want some more consistent highlights and content. But other than that, we'll get some historical significance going on this channel over the coming months. Anyway, guys, that's been me. That has been my review for Game 5 of the 26 NBA Finals. I'm out.